Egypt expresses its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip. Iran hints at the possibility of withdrawing from the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And Vladimir Putin expresses optimism about Russia-US relations.
والله العظيم ولا حبة رز، والله العظيم ولا حبة عدس. ما فيش أكل، ما فيش شرب، عندي بنت سنتين ونص صارت نص.
Egypt has expressed its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip, officially confirmed by the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry stated that these conditions are a direct result of Israel's war and its crimes against civilians. Egypt called on the international community to decisively intervene and end the violations, which include Israeli restrictions on humanitarian and food aid. The ministry emphasized the urgent need for a ceasefire to address the humanitarian crisis and praised UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres for calling the famine a man-made disaster for which Israel bears direct responsibility under international law. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has announced that 8 new deaths, including 2 children, were recorded over the past 24 hours due to famine and malnutrition in the Gaza Strip. The ministry stated that this brings the total number of famine victims to 281, including 114 children. It also stressed that the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen amid the blockade and the shortage of food and medical supplies, renewing its call on the international community and relief organizations to urgently and immediately intervene. UN agencies have mobilized officials at various levels to urge the international community to take immediate action to stop the starvation and war in Gaza. The UN agencies stressed the need for swift and concrete measures, including a ceasefire and the delivery of aid. The United Nations and its relevant agencies also took part in preparing the analysis that officially declared famine in Gaza.
Of aid workers were killed, and we have seen a 31% increase compared to the previous year.
UNRWA has called on Israel to immediately allow the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, stressing that its warehouses in Jordan and Egypt are stocked with essential supplies sufficient to fill 6,000 trucks. The agency stated that the famine can be stopped by reversing the ongoing catastrophe and flooding the Strip with massive UN aid, following the United Nations official declaration of famine in Gaza, the first of its kind in the Middle East.
Même si on parle de l'évacuation des gens de Gaza au sud, beaucoup n'auront même plus la force de pouvoir se déplacer.
Amid Gaza's ongoing suffering, Egypt emerges as the lifeline, delivering aid, healing the wounded, and mobilizing nationwide efforts to sustain hope for Palestinians. Egypt under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been at the forefront of humanitarian efforts for Gaza, keeping the Rafah border crossing perpetually open to its sides and delivering the largest share of aid throughout the crisis.
معبر الرفح مفتوح على مدار ال 24 ساعة في السبعة أيام في ال30 يوم.
From the very first days of the Israeli aggression on October 7th, 2023, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has moved swiftly. In a statement at the Long Live Egypt and Palestine conference on 23rd of November 2023, he affirmed that
كان القرار باستمرار فتح معبر رفح البري لتدفق المساعدات الغذائية والطبية والوقود.
Driven by the directives and compassionate leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Egypt has become the largest single contributor of aid to Gaza. President al-Sisi has repeatedly stressed that Egypt remains committed to humanitarian relief. Approximately 80% of all aid entering Gaza is provided by Egyptian entities.
قال كلام كتير على إن مصر هي السبب. لا.
Egypt has repeatedly coordinated agreements with UN agencies, including UNRWA, as well as the Palestinian Red Crescent, to ensure supplies enter Gaza safely and under supervision. In April 2024 alone, nearly 20 tons of medical supplies, 10 tons of fuel, and 123 tons of food, and 26 tons of water, along with ambulances and tents, crossed via Rafah. Under Egypt's humanitarian initiative, Egypt has facilitated the flow of aid by air and land, transported thousands of injured Palestinians to Egyptian hospitals, established field hospitals in Gaza, and helped vaccinate children.
وكذا استقبال الجرحى والمصابين على الرغم من ضراوة وشدة القتال، إلا أننا حافظنا على استمرار فتح المعابر.
President al-Sisi announced that Gaza typically requires between 600 and 700 truckloads of aid daily, and Egypt has worked tirelessly to facilitate as much of that as conditions allow. From air to land, Egypt's humanitarian outreach extends across multiple fronts. The country coordinated airdrops of food and relief supplies over northern Gaza in collaboration with friendly states, ensuring aid reached areas inaccessible by road.
Israeli Army radio reported that local teams along the international organization's staff have begun preparing the European hospital in Qnews to serve displaced residents from Gaza City. The radio added that the European hospital will be used as an alternative to the hospitals inside Gaza City, which are set to be evacuated as the Israeli army launches its ground operation dubbed Gedaon Chariots, the second aimed at taking control of the city. Right, and for more analysis, we now move to Mark Summers in our newsroom. To you, Mark.
Thank you, Mona. We're joined from Cairo now by the chairman of the board of directors of the International Commission to Support Palestinian Rights, Dr. Salah Abdul Ati. Thank you very much for being here with us on Q News. So how do you view Egypt's efforts to broker a ceasefire in Gaza and also facilitate the entry of humanitarian aid into the Strip?
Everyone, and good evening. We are looking, we are very positive and very hopeful for Egypt's stance and support for the Palestinian cause, and we are asking for a stop to this war. And we want them to work towards a ceasefire through mediation efforts with the countries, with the latest Egyptian mediation to support Palestine and get to a new agreement and to have them accept Witkoff's suggestion. But Israel is still resisting to accept this suggestion. And this is because Netanyahu is afraid that his government will fall, and because he wants to reach his goal of displacing the Palestinians and building the greatest Israel. And so he's using these efforts for the hostilities and the aggression, the Israeli aggression. But Egypt has been great with providing humanitarian aid to Palestinians. They have been they've contributed to 70% of humanitarian aid that have entered Gaza and pressured Israel greatly to be able to get the humanitarian aid into this. But in the past 5 months, the civilians have been denied this aid, and this caused the famine that the UN has declared yesterday. And even though after the opening of the corridors, Egypt has been giving great support to enter these aid, but the occupation army isn't helping, and they actually allow only around 15% of this humanitarian aid. And even though the Rafah corridor has thousands of convoys with aid to Palestine, and so the occupation government is still resisting the help, and they are still denying the Palestinians the aid, denying the food, and they also don't want to end the war.
And Doctor, what was your reaction when you saw the United Nations official declaration of famine in the Strip?
This declaration is very, very important. It's actually a bit late because we have called for the UN through social media, through statements that have been signed by and petitions signed by lots of Arab countries, but better late than never, as they say. And so we needed the UN to intervene and to take all the measures to stop what Israel is doing and help the aid to enter Gaza. And so, yes, we want them to start imposing sanctions on Israel and helping the aid getting into Gaza and finding safe places for the civilians to get their aid, and also allowing food and allowing the necessary aid to end this famine, because according to the UN's statement, which is the 5th in the world and the 1st in the Middle East. And so if Israel keeps doing this and takes it further, then it keeps displacing the people and it keeps starving them, this isn't going to end well. Today, 8 people have been killed or have died because of starvation, and this is now more than 278 people who have died because of the famine. And it is now sure that things are getting really dangerous right now, and we need the countries and the UN to act swiftly to end this war and to reach a ceasefire and to allow aid to get into Gaza and have them, get them drugs and medical staff also to end the famine and the diseases.
Yes, and we have a situation where Israel is pushing forward into Gaza City. Could we be approaching a scenario where Israel occupies the entire Gaza Strip within the coming hours, days?
Yes, there is a Israeli decision to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, but Israel was afraid of what's going to happen because of this, according to the rules of the international law. And the criminal Netanyahu, he said that even if they agree to the mediators proposal, they will reoccupy Gaza again. Israel isn't hesitant now, and they have declared that they will keep on displacing the people. They will keep on with the war, even though it has received lots and lots of warnings from countries all over the world. And so, on the practical side, Israel has actually started occupying Al Sabra, like Al Sabra area. It is one of the oldest, and it has churches and mosques, and it has historical stores, historical buildings as well. And they are ending Gaza and erasing all its history, and they are displacing all the people to the south, and also they have decisions to evacuate all the hospitals, with the people who have injured and everyone. And this means denying over 1 million Palestinians the drugs, the medical attention, and they are this is basically reoccupying what is left of Gaza, and they are displacing the people towards Rafah that they have destroyed, that the occupation has destroyed by displacing them. Have rejected taking part in this war and in this occupation, and we think that there will be another massacres because of Israel.
Yes, and do you think there's anything particular that you can think of that might stop Netanyahu in his tracks with his desire to occupy the Strip?
Yes, there are, there is a division in the occupation country. There are some coups from the families of the people in the resistance, and also from the soldiers who are afraid for their life, for their families, and there is also pressure from Western countries and Arab countries as well, because now the Gaza Strip is a famine zone, and they are asking for a ceasefire, and also there may be further interventions if Israel keeps its hostilities. And I think that the Arab countries are pressuring the USA and, having the Arab relationships conditioned on the USA pressuring Israel to end the war and to reach a ceasefire in the Strip, because this war, it is actually threatening Palestinians and the safety in the region.
And how do you view the international community's stance?
Unfortunately, it is very weak because everything that they have done, like meetings and stances, these were actually in vain when it came to facing the USA and their with the interventions that were unethical that some of the countries have had by supporting them with weapons, with food, with other things over 23 months. And so Netanyahu has used the negotiations and he is going on with his war and the hostilities on the bank, and he is ending the cause, basically doing different things. And so Israel is a threat to the region and to the world. Actually, it is a threat to itself even. And so with these advancements with the international community, we want them to apply the laws from the UN and to form a safety community to protect the Palestinians, and so who started the mass massacre. They haven't stopped yet, and we need also international intervention like they did in the Netherlands and other countries also. And there are some other cases that need to be applied in these kind of cases. also, and according to the Geneva agreement, also they need to to respect the international rules, and so imposing sanctions on Israel and pressuring them, holding them accountable, and getting them to court, everything that the civilians are doing as well. The policies in the countries, these are all things that could put an end to this mass massacre and guaranteeing a new agreement to reconstruct Gaza and getting the people back to their land.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on Q News. That was Dr. Salah Abdul Ati, the chairman of the board of directors of the International Commission to Support Palestinian Rights. Thank you very much indeed. And back to you, Mona.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for the analysis. Back to our bulletin. In Dutch, Foreign Minister Casper Wolkamp has resigned from his caretaker government post, citing disagreements over the government's stance on Israel's war in Gaza. Wolkamp stated he felt pushback for advocating additional measures against Israel's actions in Gaza and the occupied West Bank. His departure underscores deep divisions within the Netherlands' political landscape regarding the ongoing conflict, even as the government remains in a transitional phase.
Likewise, the 30-day Chinese visa-free arrangement for Dutch nationals.
US President Donald Trump has underscored the need to resolve the Israeli detainee crisis, calling the situation extortion and stressing his commitment to securing the release of the remaining detainees. This comes as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israel would resume negotiations on its own terms for a temporary ceasefire and the release of all detainees. The proposed deal, accepted by Hamas, includes a 60-day pause in fighting and a detainee exchange. However, Netanyahu remains determined to advance plans to capture Gaza City.
I think it would be good having the United States as your partner. He agreed, and they've agreed to do it, and I think it's a great deal for them. I'm very proud to say I got the hostages out. You have hundreds of people that are living now because of me. And now we have that final little group of people, and Hamas knows that if they give them, that's probably the end of their lives.
Gaza City residents have reported a large blast and smoke from an Israeli airstrike that came after Israel's announcement of an operation to take Gaza City. This renewed military actions proceeds despite international condemnation and is expected to cause further displacement of civilians. Israel's campaign has already caused widespread destruction to homes, schools and mosques, devastating the lives of the 2.3 million Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Ministry of Health announced that 61 people were killed and 308 others injured over the past 24 hours as they were brought to hospitals across the Strip. The ministry noted that the total death toll from the Israeli assault has risen to 62,622, with 157,673 injured since October 7, 2023. Between March 18, 2025 and today alone, the toll has reached 10,778 killed and 45,632 injured.
We're trying to make a deal so that there's no destruction and death.
Abdullah Hadri Sadghi, the representative of Iran's supreme leader, affirmed that the Strait of Hormuz is under Iranian control based on international agreements. He added that if there are threats against the country's interests, Iran may impose restrictions on the passage of hostile ships through this strategic waterway. He stressed that Iran will use all available means to guarantee national security, including imposing navigation restrictions in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has hinted at the possibility of withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, if nuclear negotiations with the E3 countries fail. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi stated that withdrawal from the treaty is an option if the trigger mechanism is activated, confirming that nuclear talks with the E3, France, the United Kingdom and Germany will resume next Tuesday. Russian President Vladimir Putin has visited Sarov, a hub for nuclear weapons, where he toured an exhibition on scientific and educational infrastructure. Afterward, Putin added that the nations are discussing joint projects in the Arctic and Alaska, signaling a potential thaw in diplomatic ties and a move towards cooperation in strategically significant regions. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expressed optimism about Russia-US relations, saying there is light at the end of the tunnel. Speaking at a nuclear research center, Putin credited US President Donald Trump's leadership qualities for the potential improvement, citing the recent very good summit in Alaska. He also said that future progress depends on US leadership and that Russia is discussing potential joint projects with the US in the Arctic.
Услуги предоставляем. Я очень рассчитываю на то, что вот первые шаги, которые были сделаны, они...
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has affirmed he would not cede any territory to Russia. This declaration comes as US President Donald Trump, showing frustration with Moscow, renewed his threat to sanction Russia if no progress is made on a peaceful resolution within 2 weeks. Zelensky continues to call for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, viewing it as the only way to end the war.
І цей прапор – це мета і мрія.
Well, that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we've been covering. Egypt expresses its profound concern over the escalating reports of famine in the Gaza Strip. Iran hints at the possibility of withdrawing from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And Vladimir Putin expresses optimism about Russia-US relations. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EGY to stay informed. Many thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.